Have you ever, like, walked into a library and just felt that, like, instant sense of calm?
Hmm.
You know, that smell of old books and the quiet turning of pages? It's just like stepping into another world.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes, there are these amazing people making that magic happen, the library assistants.
Well, right.
And only tell you, their job is way more interesting than you might think.
Oh, absolutely.
We've been digging into this career path with some help from RoleCatcher, and it turns out being a bookworm these days practically makes you a tech wizard, too.
It's true.
Hmm.
Being a library assistant is about so much more than just like loving books. It's about guiding people through a constantly evolving world of information. And increasingly, that means being comfortable with technology. Think
Yeah.
about it. Libraries aren't just about physical books anymore. They're community hubs, tech centers, and so much more.
Yeah, you know, you're right.
Right.
I remember going to the library as a kid to use the computer because we didn't have internet at home. It's amazing how libraries have adapted. But even with all this new tech, Rollcatcher makes it clear that at its core, this role is about ensuring everyone has a smooth and enjoyable library experience.
Exactly. And the guide dives into the daily tasks, and it's a surprisingly diverse list. We're not just talking about checking out books. Library assistants help with research, manage inventory and the cataloging system, and some even plan and run events.
Really, planning events, that sounds like it takes a very specific skill set.
It does, and that's what makes this career path so interesting. You could be helping someone use the database 1 minute and then leading a children's story time the next. Rollcatcher highlights just how vital those people skills and that adaptability really are.
And I bet having those tech skills is pretty high up there on the list too, right?
Absolutely. The Technology Advances section of the guide really dives into that. They point out that library assistants need to be comfortable with everything from basic computer skills to troubleshooting printers to helping patrons navigate digital resources. It's a whole other layer of knowledge that goes way beyond the Dewey Decimal System.
Which, by the way, I could never quite get the hang of. But speaking of different skills, Rollcatcher doesn't shy away from the pros and cons of this career either. On the one hand, you have job security, a generally calm work environment, and you're surrounded by knowledge all day.
Right.
What's not to love about that?
Right.
But then there's the other side of the coin.
The reality is that while job security is attractive, the salary for library assistants tends to be on the lower end of the spectrum. And we can't forget about those sometimes challenging patrons, the ones who mistake the library for, say, a bustling coffee shop.
Oh, I've definitely seen those patrons. The ones who bring their entire lunch spread and have a full volume phone conversation right next to the quiet study zone. I guess that's where those stellar customer service skills come in handy. But thinking about those interactions, it makes you realize how important library assistants are in creating a welcoming and accessible environment for everyone.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a balancing act, and Rollcatcher really highlights that.
So you're telling me it's not all about reading books in cozy corners.
Well, there might be a little bit of that, but it's definitely not the whole story. The guide actually breaks down the potential career ladder for a library assistant. And I have to say, it's pretty impressive. You could start as a library assistant, move up to senior library assistant, and eventually even become an assistant librarian. There's a lot of room to grow.
Okay, so career growth, that's exciting. But I imagine it takes a lot of dedication and continuous learning to climb that ladder. Libraries are changing so rapidly these days, what with all the technology and new ways of accessing information.
You're absolutely right. And this is something Rollcatcher really emphasizes. The knowledge and learning section talks about how crucial it is to be a lifelong learner in this field.
So staying updated, that makes a lot of sense. I guess it's not like the old days where you just memorized the Dewey Decimal System and called it a day, huh?
Not quite.
Huh.
The guide actually mentions some really interesting ways to keep learning, attending workshops, joining professional organizations, even keeping up with industry blogs and publications. It's all about staying curious and adaptable.
Yeah, it makes you realize that being passionate about knowledge and learning is just as important as any specific degree or certification in this field.
I completely agree. And speaking of being prepared, Rollcatcher also has your back when it comes to actually landing that dream library job.
Oh, right. They have that whole section on interview prep, don't they, with actual sample interview questions?
Exactly. They have 9 sample questions that are commonly asked for library assistant positions,
Yeah.
and it's really fascinating to see what they focus on. For example, one question that really stood out to me was, can you tell us about a time you went above and beyond for a patron?
Ah, the classic tell us about a time question. I've definitely faced those in interviews before. It's always a little tricky because you have to have a good story ready to go.
Right. And it's not just about telling a story. It's about showing them who you are as a library assistant. This particular question is designed to assess your customer service skills and your problem-solving abilities in action.
So it's not enough to just say, I'm a people person. You have to paint a picture with a real life example.
Precisely. A successful answer would involve a scenario where you identified a patron's need, maybe even one they didn't explicitly express, and took the initiative to help. It could be something like helping an elderly patron navigate the digital catalog, or maybe you tracked down a rare resource for a student's research project. The key is to demonstrate your empathy, your resourcefulness, and that dedication to going the extra mile.
Yeah, it sounds like having those stories ready to go is crucial for acing those interviews.
Absolutely. And that's where RoleCatcher can be incredibly helpful. They don't just give you the questions, they give you insights into what makes a good answer. It's like having a personal interview coach in your back pocket.
So we've talked about the importance of tech skills, continuous learning, and even acing those interview questions, all thanks to RoleCatcher. But let's talk about the platform itself for a second. It's clearly more than just a career guide.
Absolutely. They have sections on finding jobs, building your professional network, and something that I think our listeners will find particularly cool, an AI-powered CV and resume analysis tool.
Wow, AI analyzing resumes. That sounds kind of like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It really does, doesn't it? But it's real, and it's designed to give job seekers a serious edge.
Okay.
Imagine having AI scan hundreds of job descriptions and then pinpoint the exact skills you should highlight on your resume.
Wow.
That's what this tool does.
So instead of just hoping your resume makes it past the algorithms and into the right hands, you're using technology to make sure it speaks directly to the people doing the hiring. That's pretty brilliant.
Exactly. It's all about being strategic and using the tools available to present your best self. And in today's job market, that can really make all the difference.
Yeah, it really can. You know, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into the world of library assistants, I have to say I'm surprised by how much the field has evolved.
It really has, hasn't it? It's a career path that's constantly adapting, just like libraries themselves.
That's so true. And it makes you think, what does the future hold for library assistants? If libraries are becoming more like technology hubs, will these roles become even more tech-focused?
That's a really interesting question. And it's something for anyone considering this career path to really ponder. Will they become more like tech support specialists? Or will their core role always be about connecting people with information just through different means?
I guess only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, the role of a library assistant is anything but predictable.
Right.
And in a world that's constantly changing, maybe that's not such a bad thing.
I completely agree. It's a career that requires adaptability, a genuine love of learning, and a passion for making information accessible to everyone. And that, to me, is something worth celebrating.
And that wraps up our deep dive on library assistants.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Be sure to check out RoleCatcher for a ton more info on this career path and many more. Until next time, happy learning.